Moments ago, telescopes watching the sun caught something no one expected. The interstellar comet 3I Atlas, the same visitor already defying gravity, has just broken apart inside the solar wind. Its fragments are scattering outward, some moving faster than light pressure models allow. Tracking stations went quiet for nearly a minute as sensors overloaded. Now, astronomers are asking the question no one wants to ask aloud. Are we still safe? Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Astronomer, a quiet refuge where even the universe's loudest surprises are explored gently, one breath at a time. If these slow journeys through science and wonder bring you peace, subscribing to the Sleepy Astronomer helps this constellation of curiosity grow, so more dreamers can drift beneath the same sky of questions. Tonight, we trace the story of 3I Atlas, a comet that has now fractured near the sun, its debris spiraling through the solar wind like glowing dust in a storm. What caused it? Thermal stress? Magnetic turbulence? Or something about this interstellar traveler we still don't understand? Take a slow breath, because tonight, we'll watch a comet die, and in its death, discover how fragile even the strongest wanderers of space can be. This is the Sleepy Astronomer. You begin in a hush so deep it feels like the first breath after a long day, a breath that opens the space inside you. In this quiet, you let your awareness drift upward, slipping beyond the edges of the warm earth, rising through thinning air, moving past clouds that glow like slow-moving thoughts. You continue climbing until the sky loosens into blackness, a gentle blackness that holds the stars the way soft hands cradle a small, flickering candle. And in this calm darkness, you feel the presence of something wandering, a visitor shaped by ice and time. You picture 3I/Atlas moving with unhurried grace, a pale traveler from far beyond the sun's familiar pull. It drifts not like a bold explorer but like a quiet memory that has taken millions of years to reach you. Its path curves around the sun in a long, slow arc, a journey it did not choose but simply followed, guided by nothing more than gravity's patient hand. As you watch it move in your imagination, you sense the age of it. An age far older than Earth's continents, older than oceans, older even than the air filling your lungs. You feel the comet's surface made of ancient ices, each molecule formed in the deep cold between stars. These ices have slept for so long that their awakening feels almost tender. When sunlight touches the comet, it warms not like a blaze but like the first shy glow of dawn on your eyelids. The heat seeps inward, loosening grains of dust, coaxing streams of vapor to rise. And you feel how the comet begins to change. Not violently, not suddenly, but slowly, as though exhaling after an endless winter. This exhale becomes the beginning of the breakup. Not an explosion, not a disaster, just a gentle release. You imagine the comet turning slightly as it warms, its rotation spreading subtle stresses through its fragile body. Like a river stone cracked by years of freeze and thaw, the comet begins to open. A seam forms, then another. The ancient structure, built in darkness, yields to the sun's quiet insistence. Pieces drift apart, each fragment carrying the same old story written in frozen dust. You watch these fragments drift, and you feel no alarm. They move slowly, like petals letting go of a flower in warm wind. There is no violence here, only unfolding. Each piece glimmers faintly as sunlight scatters across fresh surfaces that have not seen light in billions of years. You imagine touching one of these surfaces. You imagine the cold, the silence, the sense of deep time stored within it. And in that imagined touch, you understand something gentle. Even breaking can be a form of becoming. You breathe with the comet as it continues its quiet metamorphosis. You notice how space, which seems so harsh from far away, becomes almost tender in this moment. Fragments drift into wide emptiness, and nothing rushes them. Nothing pushes them except the slow streams of particles flowing from the sun. You sense how small these fragments truly are. Some no larger than houses, some no larger than grains of sand. They spread out into a loose cloud, a drifting memory of what the comet once was. You float alongside them in your mind. The silence around you deepens, and you feel the comfort that comes from seeing things clearly. There is no threat in these pieces. They follow the original comet's path, stretching into a long, thin ribbon of dust and ice. You feel how the solar system is vast enough, calm enough, to hold this ribbon without disturbance. No fragment is coming toward you. None even glances in Earth's direction. Everything moves in soft, predictable curves. You let your breathing fall into rhythm with the drifting fragments. Each inhale feels like gathering starlight. Each exhale feels like setting it free. You sense how the universe often appears dramatic from a distance, yet up close, even its changes unfold slowly. Nothing here is hurried. Nothing is urgent. Not even the breaking of a comet. As you rest in this stillness, you notice how your own understanding begins to warm and expand. You realize that breakage does not always mean danger. Sometimes it simply means transition, an old structure giving way so new shapes can form. You feel how this truth applies not only to comets but also to quiet moments in your own life, moments where something loosens or shifts, or falls away so gently you barely notice until afterward. The fragments drift farther now, spreading thinly along the comet's orbit. Some will fade into dust too fine to see. Some may survive for years, perhaps centuries. But all of them move together in a soft choreography shaped by sunlight, gravity, and time. You feel how the story is still unfolding, how nothing has reached an ending yet. And as you watch, a gentle curiosity rises within you. What happens when sunlight keeps warming a comet like this? What does the bright heat truly do to an ancient traveler shaped by ice? You follow this wondering like a small thread of light, letting it guide you toward the next quiet question waiting in the glow of the sun. You linger with that thread of curiosity, letting it unwind in the stillness. You picture the sun not as a harsh furnace, but as a steady lantern glowing at the center of everything you know. Its light travels outward across millions of miles, touching planets and brushing the drifting remnants of 3I/Atlas. You imagine how that light reaches the fragments. Not instantly, but with patient waves crossing the emptiness. When the sunlight arrives, it brings gentle energy that seeps into the ice and dust. You see how each fragment responds in its own quiet way. Some warm just enough to shed a thin veil of vapor before cooling again. Some rotate slowly, turning faces toward and away from the sun. Others remain unchanged, too cold for the warmth to touch deeply. As you watch these subtle reactions, you understand that sunlight does more than warm, it reveals. It uncovers hidden layers shaped long before the sun itself existed, when these grains first formed in the hush of interstellar clouds. You let this idea settle. Sunlight as revelation, warmth as a storyteller. In that insight, you sense a quiet harmony. The comet breaks, the sun illuminates the pieces, and you witness a story unfolding across ages. There is no rush in this narrative, only movement shaped by time and distance. You feel yourself slowing to match this pace, resting in the rhythm of cosmic processes that do not hurry and do not fear their own unfolding. You sense the quiet promise of more changes waiting just beyond your sight. Gently, you follow the comet along its slow, curling path toward the sun, feeling the subtle warmth beginning to brush its frozen surface. It is not a heat that strikes abruptly, but a gentle radiance that touches each icy grain with care. You sense that the comet has carried its cold through countless miles of empty space, preserving a history older than Earth itself. And now, at the edge of the sun's influence, it begins to awaken. You watch as a fine glow gathers along its surface, like dawn spilling over the horizon of an ancient, silent landscape. Sunlight does more than illuminate. It draws. You feel the way energy lifts frozen particles, coaxing them into motion. Tiny fragments of ice and dust separate softly from the comet's body, each particle tracing a delicate, luminous arc in space. You imagine these grains spinning slowly as they rise, moving with a quiet grace that seems almost conscious. It is a dance without music, yet rhythm flows in every motion, as though the solar system itself is breathing through the comet. You notice that even the smallest particle reflects light, contributing to a growing halo of subtle brilliance. This is the first hint that change is not sudden, that even in breakage there is elegance. The surface warms in layers, a gentle pulse that spreads inward with patience. You feel how heat penetrates differently across the comet's body, softer on some faces, sharper along the seams, whispering to fractures that have lain dormant for eons. You sense how the comet responds. Vapor lifts in tiny jets, carrying fine dust that glimmers briefly against the dark backdrop of space. There is no chaos here, only a careful unfolding. The comet is a storyteller, and sunlight is the hand that opens its pages, revealing secrets hidden since the birth of the solar system. You imagine standing near one of these jets, floating in quiet awe as the ice transforms. You feel the contrast between permanence and motion, between what has been frozen for billions of years and the gentle release now unfolding. You sense the comet's body reshaping itself, not with violence, but with the patient insistence of warmth. Tiny fissures stretch imperceptibly, and grains lift like feathers released into an invisible wind. Each fragment, each moted piece of ice, carries the echo of a long journey. You recognize in this process a metaphor for your own life. Transformation need not be sudden to be profound. The comet's interior, once solid and unyielding, becomes a labyrinth of vapor channels and softened ice. You follow the sunlight's path as it penetrates these channels, illuminating hidden textures and ancient patterns. The warmth coaxes new behavior. Gentle eruptions, miniature geysers, the soft migration of dust along carved grooves. You sense a subtle choreography at work, one that depends on rotation, sunlight, and the innate fragility of ice. The comet, in its quiet disassembly, teaches you that structure can yield to grace, that energy can shape without shattering. And you notice how fragments of different sizes respond uniquely, creating a mosaic of movement that seems both chaotic and deeply ordered. The dust, lifted by the faint pressure of sublimating gases, begins to scatter outward. You feel the particles drifting like mist over a distant ocean, delicate and slow. The sunlight catches them, creating a soft, shimmering veil that stretches for hundreds of kilometers. You imagine this dust as a silent message, a trail of memory marking the comet's passage through space. Each particle holds the imprint of ancient formation, frozen in time until this very moment. You sense that the sun, in its gentle touch, is both sculptor and witness, shaping and recording the transformation simultaneously. You drift alongside these particles in your mind, sensing their trajectory and the imperceptible forces guiding them. Solar radiation pressure nudges them ever so slightly, while gravity tugs with patient care. The comet's own rotation gives some a delicate spin, tracing arcs that feel almost choreographed. You feel a deep rhythm in all this movement, a slow breathing of matter across the emptiness of space. There is beauty in this slow unfolding, a calm that grows in you as you watch the fragments float and glimmer. You notice the comet's tail beginning to form, a subtle glow extending into the void. It is not a tale of violence but of gentle expansion, a soft plume of ice and dust stretching in silent response to sunlight. You feel how the tail itself tells a story, a record of the comet's journey, a trace of material long dormant now awakened. You imagine following one of these streams for 1,000,000 kilometers, feeling its quiet drift, its patient journey through space. Even in separation, the pieces are connected, each motion informed by forces as ancient as the sun itself. As you observe, you sense the interplay between the comet's inner warmth and the sun's constant gaze. Heat drives transformation, but sunlight guides it, offering both energy and direction. You feel a narrative unfolding in real time. Ice melts, dust lifts, fragments begin to chart independent paths. And yet, there is no chaos, each movement is measured, almost tender, as if the cosmos itself is mindful of the comet's delicate state. You sense how much care is embedded in the physics of these processes, how precision and beauty coexist in quiet, unseen ways. The comet's surface continues to shift under this solar influence. You feel the subtle cracking of ice as stresses disperse, each fissure tracing the slow story of change. Jets of vapor erupt with a measured rhythm, carrying dust outward and forming miniature halos of light. You watch these halos expand and fade, like small galaxies of memory suspended in space. There is a gentle permanence in their impermanence, a quiet poetry in the ephemeral arcs of dust and ice. You sense that transformation is not merely destructive. It is generative, offering new forms and patterns as old structures relax. You allow your mind to follow the trajectory of the larger fragments, drifting slightly apart from the comet's main body. Each one moves under the same solar influence, yet responds uniquely to its composition, rotation, and exposure. You sense the elegance in their separation, a choreography written in warmth and gravity. It is a slow dance, one that has been repeated countless times across the universe whenever ice meets sunlight. You feel a gentle reassurance. There is no abrupt danger here, only the quiet unfolding of natural processes that have operated for billions of years. As you breathe with this rhythm, you notice the fine dust trailing behind each fragment. Some grains catch the light and shimmer. Others remain muted, hidden in the shadow of their companions. You sense that the comet's breakup is more than a physical event. It is a gentle revelation of history, structure, and the quiet forces shaping the solar system. Each fragment tells a story. Each plume of dust whispers the long passage of time. You feel a profound calm as you trace these whispers, letting the light and motion carry your thoughts. You imagine the sun's warmth continuing to shape these fragments over days and weeks. Some will gradually erode. Some may persist for centuries. Each response is subtle, incremental, almost imperceptible. You feel the patience required to truly understand such processes, the quiet attention needed to perceive slow transformation. And as you observe, you sense a soft curiosity arising. If ice responds so delicately to sunlight, what other hidden processes are quietly shaping this comet, guiding its fragments along unseen paths? You lean into this curiosity, letting it carry you toward the next question, the next observation. You feel the gentle pull of imagination, nudging you to follow the journey farther, to consider how small forces combine to create lasting patterns. The comet, in its slow, luminous transformation, has taught you about patience, rhythm, and the quiet power of warmth. And as you drift alongside these fragments, you begin to wonder, how do the smallest influences, light, heat, gravity, interact to guide each piece along its own trajectory, shaping the fate of this ancient traveler? You drift gently after the fragments, feeling their quiet independence as they move in paths shaped by sunlight and their own rotation. Each piece, no matter how small, carries a memory of the original comet, yet now it begins to define itself separately. You sense the subtle differences in how each fragment reacts. Some rotate rapidly, turning faces toward and away from the sun, while others seem almost still, letting warmth and solar pressure guide them slowly. It is a slow dance of individuality, a display of vulnerability and resilience intertwined. Even in their separation, the fragments remain connected by invisible forces, tracing arcs dictated by physics that are patient, precise, and unhurried. You notice the fine fissures along each fragment, tiny cracks that speak of ancient stresses accumulated over billions of years. You feel that these fractures are not signs of weakness but of adaptation. The comet's structure yields gradually to sunlight's persistent touch and internal rotational forces. Ice sublimates, dust drifts, and each movement reshapes the fragments subtly. You breathe with this rhythm, sensing that in space, nothing happens instantly. Every shift has a history, every opening a story stretching back across light years and centuries. Even a seemingly minor crack embodies a long chain of cause and effect, a soft narrative written in ice and rock. The fragments spin and drift, responding to multiple forces at once. You feel how rotation amplifies sunlight's effect, exposing different areas to warming and creating new patterns of sublimation. Some regions collapse inward, releasing material that streams into tiny tails. Other areas remain calm, preserving textures and structures unchanged. You sense the elegance of this complexity. The interplay of spin, gravity, and heat produces a choreography that is both unpredictable and meticulously ordered. In this quiet unfolding, you perceive that fragility and structure coexist harmoniously, and even the smallest fragment exhibits a remarkable balance of forces. You imagine touching one of these fragments, feeling the uneven surface beneath your fingertips, though you know it is far away. The ice is cold, yet not inert. It responds subtly to the energy flowing through it. Dust grains lift in miniature fountains, carried by jets of vapor in slow arcs. You sense how delicately the comet's materials interact with one another, how tiny differences in density, composition, or angle of exposure determine the path of each particle. Even in a seemingly chaotic breakup, there is method, a careful design embedded in natural law. You feel awe at the precision of these movements, and at the quiet patience of time itself. The fragments move through the emptiness of space like leaves caught in a gentle current. You sense the influence of the sun's gravity, pulling each piece toward the center while allowing freedom along tangential paths. Their trajectories are gentle curves, long arcs that will carry them through the solar system for decades, perhaps centuries. You float alongside them, noticing subtle differences in speed and direction. Some fragments remain close to one another, forming loose clusters, while others diverge into paths of singular exploration. Each journey is unique, yet all are governed by the same universal principles. You feel the slow erosion of material as sunlight continues its quiet work. Ice sublimates, dust drifts, and the surfaces of the fragments change in texture and reflectivity. You sense how each fragment evolves not abruptly but gradually, over hours, days, and months. Even the smallest shifts alter how sunlight interacts with the fragment, creating new patterns of warming and sublimation. You breathe with this process, feeling a rhythm in which small forces accumulate to create visible results. You understand that the comet's breakup is an ongoing process, one that will continue long after your gaze drifts away. You notice the interactions between fragments as they respond to each other's tiny gravitational tugs. Though small, these forces nudge fragments ever so slightly, altering their spins or subtle curves in their orbits. You feel the elegance of this silent conversation. Every fragment moves independently, yet remains subtly aware of its companions. It is a slow art, a meditation in motion, teaching you that space is not empty, and that even seemingly solitary objects are part of a web of influence. You sense the universe is capable of both vast isolation and gentle connection simultaneously. The comet's breakup is also a study in contrast. Some fragments are smooth, shedding dust easily, creating faint, luminous tails. Others are jagged, holding onto ice and rock, resisting change longer. You imagine how these differences arose in the original comet's formation, shaped by collisions, temperature variations, and time spent drifting in interstellar space. You feel that the diversity of these fragments mirrors the diversity of experiences, even within a single entity. Each piece carries the same origin yet tells a distinct story through its behavior and response to sunlight. You float alongside fragments that appear almost serene, noticing how sunlight illuminates them, casting long shadows across their surfaces. You sense that the breakup itself is a form of expression. The comet communicates through movement, texture, and light. Each fragment's path, each vapor jet, each drifting particle is a message about its history, its material composition, and its interaction with forces beyond its control. You feel a sense of quiet intimacy, as if you are privy to a personal story unfolding across the emptiness of space. The universe, in its patient vastness, allows such moments of revelation, even in the smallest objects. The slow separation of fragments encourages reflection. You realize that vulnerability is not weakness. The comet has endured billions of years of exposure to radiation, collisions, and the vacuum of space. Yet here it is, slowly yielding to sunlight, transforming in a process that is gentle and continuous. You sense a parallel with your own life. Changes often occur gradually, shaped by forces both seen and unseen. The slow art of fragmentation is a lesson in resilience, patience, and the quiet beauty of letting go while remaining whole in essence. You notice that the debris from the comet does not scatter wildly but forms coherent streams. You follow these streams, feeling how sunlight, heat, and residual momentum guide the particles along predictable paths. You sense the elegance of space's invisible framework. It holds chaos in check, shaping the motion of countless fragments with precision and care. Each fragment, in its own motion, reveals the subtle laws of physics that govern movement, balance, and energy. You breathe in this knowledge, feeling a gentle reassurance in the predictability embedded in the cosmos. As you drift with the fragments, a quiet question emerges. Where will each piece ultimately go? You sense that some will endure, traveling for eons, while others may erode into dust, joining the interplanetary medium. The future paths of these fragments are unknown, yet they follow natural laws that have existed since the formation of the solar system. You feel a serene acceptance of uncertainty, realizing that even when outcomes are unpredictable, the process itself is beautiful, ordered, and worthy of attention. You float with this thought, letting it guide your curiosity. The comet's fragmentation is an invitation to observe patiently. You sense that every fissure, every spin, every lift of dust is part of a deliberate unfolding. Time, temperature, rotation, and sunlight interact to create movement that is slow, intentional, and graceful. You breathe alongside these processes, aligning your awareness with their rhythm. You feel your own heartbeat synchronize with the cosmic pulse, finding comfort in the fact that slow, persistent forces create enduring results, shaping the destiny of objects both large and small. You drift farther along with the fragments, noticing how each responds uniquely to sunlight, spin, and gravity. The small jets of vapor continue to carry dust outward, forming ephemeral halos that shimmer faintly in the blackness. You imagine these halos stretching across millions of kilometers, silent reminders of the comet's ancient origins. You feel a sense of calm as you watch this slow transformation, recognizing that change need not be loud or abrupt to be meaningful. The fragment's journey is ongoing, and so too is your contemplation. You let your attention lift with the comet fragments as they move through the quiet emptiness of space. Around them, the sun continues its invisible influence, sending out a stream of charged particles, a wind that carries energy across the solar system. It is not a wind like the gusts you know on Earth, not forceful or harsh, but a steady, persistent flow, like the slow exhale of a patient breath. You feel yourself drifting in rhythm with this movement, allowing the soft current to guide your awareness alongside the comet's tiny companions. You notice the fine dust that has lifted from the fragments, glimmering faintly in the light. Each grain moves not entirely on its own, but in subtle response to the solar wind, pushed gently along paths dictated by unseen forces. You sense that these particles, though minuscule, carry immense history, the story of ice and rock formed long before the planets existed. They drift like tiny memories, a luminous mist weaving across the vast, black sea of space. You feel a calm fascination as you watch them scatter slowly, tracing delicate arcs behind each fragment. The tails of the fragments begin to form with increasing clarity. They stretch outward in soft plumes, glowing faintly where sunlight illuminates the ice and dust. You sense the elegance in the way these streams extend. Some are broad and diffuse, others narrow and focused, yet all move with the same gentle cadence. You feel the comet's narrative unfolding in these tails, the ancient materials telling their story through motion, light, and dispersion. It is a language written not in words but in trajectories, velocities, and reflective glimmers. You breathe in this quiet poetry, letting the rhythm of movement soothe your thoughts. As you float near the fragments, you sense the solar wind brushing against them. You feel it as a whisper, nudging the dust, coaxing particles into extended streams. There is no urgency here, only persistence. Over time, the continuous pressure shapes the tail's direction, guiding their paths across the emptiness. You notice how the fragments' rotation and orientation affect the tails. Some flare briefly toward the sun, others arch backward in graceful curves. Each movement is subtle, deliberate, and harmonious, revealing how delicate forces sculpt forms on a scale both vast and infinitesimal. You imagine yourself standing on one of the fragments, feeling the dust lifting from your surroundings in miniature plumes. Even here, the forces are gentle, imperceptible except through patient observation. You sense the transformation happening at every level. Ice converts to vapor, vapor carries dust, and the wind carries both into the void. It is a slow process, almost like breathing, where exhalation and inhalation take place across light minutes and hours. You feel a deep calm in recognizing the patience inherent in these cosmic motions. You follow one of the larger plumes, noticing how it separates from the fragment and spreads. Each particle traces a slightly different path, influenced by its size, mass, and initial velocity. Some drift slowly, almost lazily, while others accelerate with a delicate, consistent push from the wind. You see the geometry emerging: a ribbon of light, a delicate fan, a faint tail that stretches across the emptiness. You feel the same kind of meditative satisfaction that comes from watching a river ripple quietly, knowing that every movement is shaped by invisible forces with infinite patience. The interaction between dust and wind teaches you subtle lessons about balance. You notice that while the solar wind moves steadily outward, gravity from the sun and other planets exerts a gentle pull, bending paths, slowing particles, or allowing some to drift further than others. You feel that the particles are never truly free. They are guided, yet they are also independent, caught in an exquisite interplay between agency and influence. This interplay gives the comet's breakup a sense of coherence, a quiet order hidden within apparent dispersion. You sense that even in chaos, there is structure waiting to be perceived. You watch smaller fragments forming their own tails, joining the larger stream in complex patterns. You feel a sense of connection between these scattered pieces. Though separated, they move in related, interwoven ways. You notice the smallest grains, invisible from afar, still drifting in response to the same wind. Each particle's movement is slow and deliberate, stretching across space like the brushstrokes of an ancient, patient artist. You sense that the sun's influence is not a force of destruction but of shaping, guiding matter into forms that reveal its journey through the solar system. As you float with the dust, you begin to see how light transforms perception. Sunlight reflects off particles, creating faint glimmers that appear almost like stars born anew. You feel a poetic rhythm in their motion. Some particles shimmer brightly before fading, others remain muted, steady, and soft. You notice the delicate differences in texture and composition, how some dust grains scatter light widely, while others absorb it quietly. The visual symphony of glimmering points forms a living map of the comet's gradual dispersal, a quiet spectacle in which nothing rushes, and yet every motion has significance. You drift farther, noticing how the tails stretch and slowly curve along the fragment's orbits. You feel the precision in the alignment of these streams. Sunlight, particle size, wind pressure, and rotational motion all converge to shape paths that are both predictable and mesmerizing. You sense that the smallest interactions, like the angle of rotation or the distribution of dust, have lasting impact over time. Each particle carries a narrative, a record of forces that have worked patiently to create movement, sculpt form, and reveal the quiet elegance of natural law. You feel a profound calm as you observe the integration of forces shaping each fragment and its dust. The solar wind is persistent yet gentle, the sun's gravity subtle yet constant. You sense the harmony of these interactions, how every tail, every stream, and every fragment responds in its own way while remaining part of a greater structure. You breathe with this rhythm, aligning your mind to the cadence of space, letting awareness expand to include the delicate interactions of particles invisible to the naked eye. You notice patterns emerging over vast distances. Dust forms wisps and fans, some trailing along orbital paths, others lifted at slight angles to create sweeping arcs. You feel the patience embedded in every motion. The solar wind may take hours, days, or weeks to alter a fragment's path noticeably, yet each adjustment is deliberate, inevitable, and precise. You sense that in space, change is a meditation, and every tiny particle participates in a choreography that reflects the vast age and care of the cosmos. You imagine the fragments continuing to drift, carrying their luminous dust trails like faint signatures. Some particles will eventually fade into the background of the solar system, while others may continue for years, stretching behind the comet as testimony to its journey. You sense the continuity of motion, the quiet persistence that guides all celestial objects. You feel comforted by the knowledge that while individual pieces drift independently, their paths remain shaped by predictable, elegant forces, allowing the cosmos to maintain order even in dispersal. You float alongside the fragments one last time, noticing the solar wind brushing gently against them, nudging their dust into streams that glow softly in reflected sunlight. You feel the continuity of their paths, the steady unfolding of motion shaped by centuries of accumulated energy. Even as individual fragments follow their own courses, the collective movement forms a slow, luminous dance that stretches across space, inviting quiet reflection on the patient forces that govern the universe. You let your mind drift farther from the glowing trails of dust, moving now into the realm of invisible influence. Here, gravity becomes your companion, gentle yet omnipresent. It is not a sudden tug or a violent pull, but a calm, persistent shaping force, guiding every fragment along curved paths that stretch endlessly into space. You sense its presence as a quiet rhythm beneath the motion of each particle, each fragment tracing arcs as precise and inevitable as rivers bending through a landscape. Gravity does not shout. It whispers, and yet its reach is vast, shaping the very architecture of the solar system. You feel the subtle effect of the sun's gravity on each comet fragment. It holds them close, ensuring they remain part of the solar system, yet it grants them freedom along tangential paths, allowing gentle divergence. You sense how each piece responds differently depending on its size, spin, and trajectory. Some fragments cling almost tightly to the sun's pull, tracing slow elliptical paths. Others drift farther, moving like dancers at the edge of an invisible stage. You notice that gravity is not about force in the sense of sudden impact. It is a slow sculptor, guiding without coercion, shaping without haste. Earth, from your perspective, is a distant blue pearl, softly illuminated, its gravitational influence stretching quietly outward. You feel the gentleness of its tug, an almost imperceptible presence compared to the sun's steady command. The fragments of 3I/Atlas float far beyond any path that could intersect with our planet. You sense reassurance in this. The vast distances of space create natural safety, a buffer woven by gravity itself. Even as pieces drift independently, the invisible lines of force ensure that most will never stray close enough to matter. There is a serenity in understanding that the cosmos contains order, even amid apparent dispersal. You imagine tracing the curved arcs of the fragments' orbits in slow motion. Each path is a graceful line through the dark, like ribbons carried by an unseen current. Gravity's influence is constant, unhurried, and patient, allowing the fragments to follow predictable courses over time. You notice that while each fragment seems to move independently, their trajectories are subtly intertwined, shaped by the delicate balance of centripetal force and inertia. You feel awe at this quiet coordination, the invisible harmony guiding every step of the comet's broken body. The patterns of orbital motion bring you a sense of rhythm and calm. You sense that the universe has its own heartbeat, measured not in seconds but in years, centuries, and millennia. Each fragment moves with a steady, unbroken patience, following curves that have been repeated countless times throughout the solar system. You feel your own breathing align with this rhythm, slow and gentle, matching the calm pulse of celestial motion. Gravity, in its quiet insistence, teaches that stability comes not from forceful intervention, but from steady, continuous influence over time. You observe smaller fragments and dust particles being subtly nudged by gravity as well. Even the faintest grains respond to these invisible currents, tracing arcs that are imperceptible to the naked eye but measurable across vast distances. You sense the elegance in this coordination. Chaos exists only in appearance, while the underlying patterns reveal careful balance. The fragments of 3I/Atlas are free to drift, yet never truly untethered. Every particle, every tail of dust, every spinning ice fragment participates in a slow dance choreographed by gravity, reminding you that movement and stability are not opposites, but companions. You imagine following a single fragment as it arcs around the sun, tracing a pathway shaped by the interplay of inertia and gravitational pull. The motion is smooth and continuous, almost meditative. You feel a sense of reassurance knowing that such movements are predictable, governed by precise mathematical laws discovered centuries ago, yet written into the fabric of the universe long before anyone observed them. You sense the safety and understanding, the comfort that arises when uncertainty is replaced by knowledge, when invisible forces become a guide rather than a source of fear. The larger fragments exert subtle influences on smaller neighbors, their tiny gravitational tugs creating minute shifts in rotation or path. You sense this as a delicate conversation, a quiet interaction that alters the fragment's motion imperceptibly over time. You realize that space is not emptiness but a network of relationships, where even distant objects can feel one another's presence. The interactions are slow, measured in hours, days, and months, and yet they accumulate, shaping the evolution of each fragment with patience and precision. You breathe in this understanding, feeling the serene order embedded in all motion. You imagine the comet fragments tracing curved ribbons through the solar system, some traveling close to the orbits of distant planets, yet never intersecting with them. Each path is an example of gravity's gentle guiding hand, a demonstration of how balance and motion coexist. You sense that orbits are not just pathways. They are poems, written in invisible ink, readable only to those who observe patiently. The fragment's slow arcs, the trailing dust, and the faint tails all combine to create a dynamic, evolving artwork, shaped by forces that are constant, patient, and universal. As you float alongside the fragments, you notice how even minor variations in size, spin, and density affect their courses. Some curves are tighter, some more elongated, and yet all respond predictably to the sun's and planet's gravitational influence. You sense the precision in this natural law. Each fragment moves as if following an internal script, obeying the slow, silent instructions written into space long before it was born. You feel the elegance of this system, the reassurance that comes from recognizing that complexity need not be chaotic, and that every motion has a purpose within the cosmic order. You observe that gravity also ensures a certain longevity for these fragments. They are kept within the solar system's architecture, circling, drifting, and occasionally nudged by planetary encounters, yet rarely straying into random paths. You sense that space has its own kind of security, woven into the very physics of motion. Even as fragments break apart, even as ice and dust drift outward, there is a continuity, a guiding influence that maintains the overall balance. You feel a soft comfort in this. The universe, while vast and seemingly indifferent, contains patterns of care and structure. You notice the interplay between gravity and the solar wind you observed earlier. Dust streams are not random. Their spread is shaped not only by gentle sunlight and pressure, but also by the persistent pull of gravitational forces. You sense that these combined influences create a choreography of movement, guiding every particle along a path that is at once unique and ordered. Even in apparent separation, the comet fragments and dust adhere to the rules of the universe, moving with grace and consistency. You feel a quiet joy in recognizing the harmony of these invisible forces. You allow your mind to follow the smallest fragments, drifting along arcs shaped by gravity and momentum. Some spin, some tumble, some trail faint tails of dust, yet all remain within predictable corridors. You sense a calm satisfaction in observing the persistence of natural law. Nothing here is hurried. Nothing is arbitrary. The comet's breakup, once potentially alarming in imagination, is revealed as a measured, predictable, and graceful process. You feel comfort in this rhythm, a reassurance that even in motion and change, the cosmos is guided by invisible hands that provide stability and order. You drift alongside Earth in your awareness, noting how distant yet steady our planet's gravity is in contrast to the comet's motion. You feel safe knowing that the fragments, though active and luminous, are unlikely to intersect with our orbit. Gravity has carved paths that preserve distance and predictability, a silent guardian ensuring that the dance of cosmic debris occurs far from harm. You sense the wisdom in this natural architecture. The universe's forces not only guide motion but also protect, creating safety through structure, patience, and scale. You drift gently from the comet's distant fragments toward the planet that hosts observers of the heavens. Earth turns beneath you slowly, a soft blue and green sphere suspended in space, rotating with a steady grace. From above, you sense its calm vigilance, its readiness to notice the faintest spark of light traveling across the void. Telescopes, like patient eyes, scan the sky night after night, some perched atop mountains, others floating in orbit, all attuned to the quiet whispers of cosmic travelers. You feel the rhythm of this attention, a continuous, watchful presence that transforms distance into understanding. You glide closer to one such observatory, where a telescope's lens gleams faintly under the night sky. You sense the dedication of the astronomers behind it, individuals whose attention never wavers, even when the light they study is dim and fleeting. They measure subtle glimmers, track tiny arcs, and record infinitesimal changes, turning what could be uncertainty into clarity. You feel the patience in their work, the slow accumulation of knowledge, like water wearing away rock over centuries. Observation, you sense, is an art of trust, a meditation in which every data point becomes a lantern in the vast darkness. The telescope's lens captures photons that have traveled millions of kilometers, whispering the story of 3I/Atlas and its fragments. You sense the faint trail of ice and dust, arriving gently after its long journey from the sun. Each photon carries a fragment of history, a quiet signal that must be deciphered with care. You feel the meticulous thought that transforms light into knowledge, that turns random glimmers into a coherent narrative. Observation is slow, deliberate, and infinitely patient, a reflection of the cosmos itself, which reveals its secrets gradually, never rushed. You imagine standing beside the astronomer, feeling the quiet hum of machines, the faint click of shutters, and the soft glow of screens displaying numbers and curves. You sense how each measurement, no matter how small, builds a map of the fragments' paths, their velocities, and their orientation. You feel the reassurance this brings. Distance and motion are no longer abstract concepts but quantified and understood. The comet's breakup, once distant and unknowable, becomes a phenomenon you can follow, trace, and predict. You sense calm emerging from understanding, a comfort born from patient observation. You drift past observatories around the world, noticing how telescopes of all sizes contribute their own pieces to the puzzle. Each instrument focuses on a narrow sliver of the sky, gathering light, measuring intensity, and feeding the information into a shared story. You sense that no single telescope sees everything, but together they form a network of awareness, a chorus of observation. You feel gratitude for this collaboration, for the gentle vigilance that stretches across continents and oceans, a human reflection of the universe's patient rhythms. You imagine the astronomers compiling their data, translating faint signals into charts, graphs, and predictive models. You sense the satisfaction in discovering order within apparent chaos, as calculations reveal the comet's distance, speed, and projected path. Each night's work brings small revelations: the orientation of fragments, the spread of dust, the subtle influence of sunlight and solar wind. You feel the comfort in these revelations, the reassurance that knowledge softens the edge of uncertainty, and that careful attention brings clarity and calm. You float alongside a radio telescope as it listens for frequencies beyond visible light, sensing the gentle hum of signals from space. You notice how scientists interpret these invisible vibrations, translating them into understanding of composition, activity, and motion. Even when the fragments are distant or faint, the signals carry insight, whispering secrets across the emptiness. You sense that observation is a conversation with the universe, a quiet dialogue in which listening carefully allows comprehension. You feel that by paying attention, the planet itself becomes a guardian of understanding, a mediator between the vast and the familiar. You follow data streams as they flow from observatories to researchers, carrying measurements across networks and labs. You sense the devotion embedded in this process, the meticulous care taken to ensure accuracy and reliability. Each number, each image, each spectral reading adds a layer of certainty. You feel the reassurance in this diligence. While comets may drift unpredictably in space, the knowledge of their paths grows steadily, layer by layer, like sediment forming along a riverbed. You sense calm in the accumulation of understanding, a gentle order emerging from patient scrutiny. You drift toward the night sky itself, observing the fragments through layers of atmosphere, clouds, and city light. You sense how observers must contend with interference, distortion, and uncertainty, yet persist nonetheless. You feel the beauty in this persistence, in the determination to see faint points of light against the immense darkness. Every fragment tracked, every dust tail measured, is a testament to human patience and curiosity. You breathe slowly with this realization, feeling a quiet kinship with those who watch the heavens tirelessly, translating distant signals into comfort and insight. You notice that observation is not merely about watching. It is about understanding relationships. You sense how astronomers calculate orbital paths, predict fragment positions, and anticipate interactions with solar wind or gravitational influence. Observation transforms chaos into narrative, turning drifting fragments into stories with beginnings, middles, and likely futures. You feel the reassurance that comes from this comprehension. The universe, while vast and indifferent, can be known in small, careful ways. Every night of watching becomes a meditation in trust and understanding. You imagine the fragments' dust tails stretching faintly across space, invisible to the naked eye, yet recorded in the precise measurements of observatories. You sense how astronomers extract meaning from subtle variations in brightness, the faint curvature of trajectories, or the smallest hints of sublimation. Each calculation, each plotted point, forms a protective web of knowledge, ensuring that distant events remain comprehensible and non-threatening. You feel a soft serenity in this process. Through patient observation, the unknown becomes known, and fear is replaced by understanding. You drift slowly back, imagining the Earth turning beneath you as observatories continue their quiet vigil. You sense the cumulative power of attention, how repeated nights of careful watching reveal patterns that might otherwise be invisible. Each tiny fragment is accounted for, each particle of dust mapped across the sky. You feel that this vigilance mirrors the rhythm of the universe itself, slow, deliberate, and enduring. Observation is not hurried. It is a gentle, persistent presence, guiding comprehension through the vast expanse. You notice how this network of observation extends beyond a single planet. Satellites, telescopes in orbit, and global collaborations enhance the ability to track 3I/Atlas and its fragments. You feel the interconnectedness of human effort, a reflection of the natural interconnectedness that governs the solar system. Knowledge, like light, spreads across space, illuminating the darkness. You sense comfort in the constancy of this effort, reassurance in the cumulative wisdom gathered night after night. You allow yourself to float alongside the observations, following streams of data as they converge into predictive models. You sense the elegance of calculation. Distance, velocity, direction, and orbital parameters transform into understanding. You feel the satisfaction in this gentle certainty, the quiet reassurance that comes from seeing patterns where before there was only the unknown. Observation, you realize, is an act of care, a protective embrace offered by knowledge. You breathe with this awareness, letting the rhythm of patient attention settle your mind. You let your awareness lift beyond the telescopes, drifting into the solar system itself, where distances stretch across millions of kilometers, and invisible boundaries guide the motion of every celestial body. Here, you sense that the cosmos is organized with a quiet, deliberate logic. Orbits are not random. They are carefully traced by the forces that shape the universe, and even broken fragments follow these invisible lines with a rhythm that is both precise and gentle. You feel yourself moving alongside these pathways, sensing the space between the sun, the planets, and the wandering comet fragments. You notice how astronomers map these invisible corridors, plotting the position and velocity of each fragment with exacting care. They measure light from distant particles, calculate how gravity bends paths, and predict trajectories with astonishing precision. You feel the patience required for this work, the slow accumulation of knowledge that transforms uncertainty into understanding. Each calculation is like laying a stone along a quiet riverbank, creating a solid path through the flowing currents of space. You sense reassurance in this order, a soft confidence that the fragments will remain within predictable regions. The concept of safe distance begins to take shape around you. You feel it as an invisible shield, not made of matter but of knowledge and gravitational harmony. 3I/Atlas and its fragments move along paths that keep them far from Earth's orbit. The distances involved are vast, measured not in minutes or hours, but in days, months, and even years of travel across the solar system. You sense the calm that comes with this knowledge, a quiet comfort that no immediate danger exists. Space itself, guided by gravity and time, becomes a guardian. You drift alongside one of the larger fragments, observing how it follows a slow arc around the sun. You notice the precision with which its orbit avoids the inner planets, threading through vast expanses of empty space. The motion is gentle and predictable, a testament to the balance inherent in celestial mechanics. You feel awe at this natural choreography, where every fragment, no matter how small or distant, has a path shaped by forces that are at once invisible, patient, and enduring. The universe is vast, yet in its expanse, there is order. You imagine tracing the fragments' orbits on a cosmic map, each line curving smoothly around the sun. The astronomers' calculations extend across these distances, using mathematics as a bridge between observation and understanding. You sense the elegance of this work, the care with which every potential variation is considered. Even when fragments break further, or ice and dust drift into faint streams, their trajectories remain largely predictable. You feel the calm assurance that comes from comprehending the scale and reliability of these motions. You notice that the smallest particles, released from the comet during its breakup, follow similar principles. Though they are more susceptible to solar radiation and wind, they too move along paths shaped by gravity. Some arcs are subtle, bending gently over long distances, while others are almost imperceptible in their motion. You feel that even the tiniest grains of dust participate in the same cosmic order as the largest fragment, that every element of the comet's body is guided by the quiet, patient hand of universal law. The distance between these particles and Earth remains comfortably vast. You sense the cumulative effect of distance as protection. The farther a fragment drifts from Earth's orbit, the less influence it has on our world, and the less we need to worry. You notice how astronomers calculate not only positions but also margins of safety, considering tiny variations in velocity or gravitational perturbations. You feel the reassurance in these careful measurements. Safety is built not on chance, but on deliberate understanding. Each fragment is accounted for, each path predicted, and the vastness of space becomes a natural shield. You float past planetary orbits, noticing how each celestial body has its own gravitational domain, guiding fragments without ever touching them directly. You sense that the solar system is a network of invisible corridors, each defined by mass, distance, and motion. Fragments of 3I/Atlas move through these corridors with gentle precision, threading through the spaces between planets, avoiding collision not by luck, but by design. You feel comforted by the scale of this order, the calmness inherent in knowing that the universe has a method to its apparent randomness. You observe the patterns of repeated monitoring by scientists. Night after night, they collect data, update models, and refine predictions, ensuring that even minor uncertainties are accounted for. You feel the patience embedded in this process, the soft rhythm of accumulation that mirrors the slow dance of the fragments themselves. Every observation contributes to the map of safe distance, a quiet reassurance that distance is more than a number. It is protection, crafted through knowledge and careful attention. You notice that even when fragments drift far beyond the inner solar system, astronomers continue to track them, following their journey through the dark. You sense that observation does more than satisfy curiosity. It provides a framework for understanding, a narrative that assures safety and predictability. The farther the fragments travel, the clearer their motion becomes, because their paths are less perturbed by nearby forces. You feel the serenity in this realization. Distance itself becomes a guardian, a patient enforcer of order. You imagine tiny fragments stretching across millions of kilometers, moving through invisible corridors defined by gravity and orbital momentum. You sense that no fragment is entirely free, yet none are constrained in a way that creates danger. Each particle moves with elegance, tracing arcs that the universe itself seems to have designed. You feel a gentle trust emerging as you watch these motions. The universe, in its vastness, is capable of maintaining both freedom and safety, allowing fragments to drift endlessly without threatening distant worlds. You sense the interplay between distance, speed, and prediction. You notice how small deviations in trajectory are accounted for, how solar radiation and planetary influence are factored into long-term forecasts. You feel comfort in the thoroughness of this science, the quiet confidence that comes from understanding the variables that govern motion. Even as fragments separate, the vast distances and the laws of physics ensure that they do not approach Earth. Safety, you realize, is woven into the very fabric of the solar system, and observation ensures it is understood and preserved. You drift alongside the comet fragments one final time, tracing their paths in your mind. The arcs stretch away from Earth, guided by gravity and momentum, measured by patient observation, and protected by distance. You sense the elegance of this arrangement, the reassurance that comes from seeing order in motion, and the calm persistence of universal law. You feel that these fragments, though broken, are not chaotic. They are part of a structured system, moving with grace across unimaginable space. You drift gently downward toward Earth's atmosphere, carrying the fragments of 3I/Atlas in your imagination. Tiny grains, no larger than sand particles, trail behind the comet as it moves through the solar system, imperceptible to the naked eye, yet full of ancient history. You sense their icy cores and mineral dust, remnants of a world formed long before humans walked the Earth. These particles are voyagers, traveling vast distances, and some may one day intersect with Earth's orbit, entering the delicate layers of air that surround your planet. You feel a soft thrill at this thought, imagining distant fragments as travelers becoming fleeting visitors in the sky. As these grains approach the upper atmosphere, you notice the first signs of interaction. Air molecules begin to resist their motion, gently slowing their fall, and friction begins to warm them. You sense the subtle heat, not violent or frightening, but soft and luminous, like the glow of a candle in a quiet room. Tiny streaks of light appear as each particle burns away, releasing energy stored from its journey across the void. You feel wonder at the transformation. What was once cold, distant, and solid becomes a delicate ribbon of light, visible for a fraction of a second. The universe is revealing its beauty through ephemeral flashes. You imagine yourself watching this meteor shower from a calm, dark field, far from city lights. You notice the faint streaks crossing the night sky, each a signal of a fragment that once belonged to 3I/Atlas. You sense the continuity between the distant comet and these brief illuminations, a bridge across space and time. The experience is not dangerous. The grains are too small to reach the surface, instead dissolving in a soft glow high above. You feel a quiet awe, realizing that even the smallest fragments participate in a cosmic story, carrying ancient material and releasing it in a luminous farewell. You drift alongside these streaks, sensing the gentle physics at play. As the grains enter the atmosphere at tens of kilometers per second, the friction between particle and air compresses and heats the molecules around them. This process is not violent but controlled, guided by natural law. You notice that the brightness of each meteor depends on its composition and size. A grain with more metals glows brightly, leaving a silver trail. A tiny icy fragment may barely flicker, a whisper of light. You feel the subtle poetry of these differences, each particle narrating its own journey with soft, luminous language. The meteor shower becomes a meditation on transformation. You sense that what was once part of a distant, shattered comet is now giving itself to the sky, dissolving in light rather than matter. It is a gentle release, a cosmic exhalation, turning ending into beauty. You feel the ephemeral nature of this gift. It cannot be held, only witnessed. And yet, in that moment of illumination, the fragment's history, journey, and dissolution become intimately present. You breathe with this rhythm, slow and reflective, like the soft passing of starlight through the atmosphere. You imagine the layers of Earth's air welcoming these travelers. The mesosphere, where most meteors burn up, acts as a soft cushion, ensuring that even at incredible speed, the particles cannot harm. You sense the balance between motion, energy, and safety, a delicate choreography orchestrated by the planet itself. The grain's final act is both destructive and gentle. Their mass dissipates, but their light lingers for a heartbeat, a message from distant space. You feel a comforting symmetry in this. Endings in the cosmos are often gentle and beautiful, not violent or threatening. You observe the patterns of meteor showers, noting how Earth passes through streams of debris left behind by comets over centuries. You sense that this is part of a larger cosmic rhythm. The slow shedding of material, the circulation of dust, and the repeated encounters with planets. Each streak of light in the sky is a marker of this rhythm, a pulse in the silent song of the solar system. You feel gratitude for the continuity and predictability, the knowledge that what appears random is often part of a larger, harmonious order. You notice that even the smallest fragments carry ancient secrets. Trapped gases, frozen compounds, and minerals that predate the Earth itself. As they burn in the atmosphere, they release energy, light, and trace elements. You sense the profound intimacy of this process. The distant and cold history of a comet becomes a fleeting, radiant whisper in your night sky. You feel a quiet reflection on the passage of time, the transformation of matter, and the gentle touch of the universe upon your senses. You imagine the fleeting trails fading, dissipating into nothingness, yet leaving a sense of wonder and awe behind. You feel the ephemeral beauty of this process, a reminder that even destruction can become creation, that breakage and dissolution are part of the ongoing narrative of the cosmos. You sense the rhythm in every streak, the path traced by gravity, guided by momentum, softened by atmosphere, and illuminated by friction. The sky becomes a canvas, painted in transient lines of light, carrying the quiet story of 3I/Atlas across centuries of travel. You float above the observing cities, imagining people gazing skyward, unaware of the precise mechanics behind what they see, yet sharing in the wonder of cosmic events. You sense that meteor showers create connection between fragments and planet, between ancient materials and modern observers, between space and human imagination. You feel the calm that comes from understanding and the joy of simply witnessing, knowing that even distant, broken comets can offer gifts, small and beautiful, to a world that waits patiently below. You notice how scientists prepare for these events, mapping likely showers, predicting timing, and ensuring understanding of their sources. You feel the gentle reassurance that comes from this preparation. The universe's beauty is observed, anticipated, and celebrated without danger. Knowledge transforms uncertainty into comfort, curiosity into peaceful anticipation. You sense that meteor showers, though fleeting, provide a bridge between the vastness of space and the intimacy of human experience, a soft connection across unimaginable distances. You drift once more along the fragments' paths, imagining them shedding countless grains of dust, each a tiny beacon in the night. You feel the gentle inevitability of this shedding, the quiet rhythm of cosmic processes that continue regardless of human awareness. You sense the patience of the universe, the slow unfolding of phenomena that may only be glimpsed briefly, yet are part of a continuous story. The comet's breakup, once distant and abstract, now manifests as streaks of light, reminding you that even endings in space can be luminous and gentle. You drift gently higher, above the reach of Earth's atmosphere, and the solar system unfolds beneath you like a vast, delicate diagram. Each planet traces its loop around the sun, tracing paths that have persisted for billions of years. The fragments of 3I/Atlas move along similar arcs, smaller and faster, weaving through the same silent geometry. You feel the rhythm of these motions, a kind of celestial music where every note is dictated by gravity, mass, and velocity. The loops and curves are not random but the result of natural law, repeating, predictable, and calming in their constancy. As you float alongside the inner planets, you notice the smooth elliptical paths they follow. Mercury, so close to the sun, moves with a rapid heartbeat. Venus, Earth, and Mars glide more slowly, yet with equal elegance. You sense that every object, large or small, participates in this cosmic dance. Even the smallest fragments of a broken comet are bound to these loops, guided by the subtle yet unwavering pull of gravity. There is a softness in this order, a reassurance that even in breakage, movement obeys predictable, harmonious patterns. You drift closer to one of 3I/Atlas's fragments, noticing how it moves along its own curve around the sun, unaffected by Earth's distant orbit. You sense the slow push and pull of gravity, the tug of planets far away, and the slight effect of solar radiation pressure on its icy surface. Each influence is small, almost imperceptible, yet combined they shape the path with gentle precision. You feel that the universe, in its vastness, orchestrates this motion with a calm patience, allowing every particle, grain, and fragment to follow its own path without harm or chaos. You notice that the geometry of orbits is more than a line or curve. It is a relationship, a story of motion and force. You sense how the sun's immense gravity anchors the system, while each planet's own mass bends space slightly, guiding nearby fragments subtly. Even a broken comet, shedding ice and dust, follows this web of influences, weaving through the same loops, drifting along invisible corridors. You feel comfort in this. Every motion is anticipated, every trajectory predictable, and the entire system hums with quiet order. You float outward past the asteroid belt, observing the countless rocky bodies that trace their own orbits between Mars and Jupiter. You sense that these objects, like the fragments of 3I/Atlas, obey the same principles, moving along paths carved by gravity over millions of years. Their motions, while complex, are comprehensible through mathematics and observation. You feel a soft reassurance in the knowledge that what may seem chaotic at first glance is actually an intricate geometry, a system of balance and harmony, where everything has its place and role. You drift further, past the gas giants, their immense gravities shaping the orbits of distant fragments and smaller bodies. You sense how Jupiter, with its colossal mass, shepherds asteroids and comets alike, creating zones of stability and instability that guide the movement of objects over vast distances. You feel that even the fragments of 3I/Atlas are subject to these subtle forces, though their distance and velocity keep them far from collision. The universe's geometry is not rigid. It is flexible yet precise, allowing freedom within order, movement within safety. You imagine tracing the paths of the fragments with invisible lines, arcs extending into the darkness beyond the planets. Each line is a memory of forces applied, a record of momentum conserved. You feel the calm logic in these paths, the elegance of celestial mechanics. Even broken comets, splintered into pieces, respect the geometry of motion. You sense that these pathways offer not just predictability, but beauty. Loops, curves, and spirals that stretch across the solar system, silent and graceful, echoing the natural poetry of gravity and time. You notice that orbits can be circular, elliptical, parabolic, or hyperbolic, each determined by energy, speed, and the influence of nearby masses. You feel the subtle distinctions, the quiet elegance in each type, and the way fragments settle into patterns that balance speed and distance. Some arcs will take them close to the sun, others far into the outer solar system. You sense a calm in this diversity. No path is chaotic, no trajectory reckless, yet every orbit has its own character, a gentle expression of physics in motion. You float along a fragment's path as it approaches a distant zone beyond Neptune, where the edges of the solar system begin to blur into interstellar space. You sense the transition from the sun's dominant gravity to the weaker pull of surrounding stars, where the fragment's motion becomes slower, more influenced by subtle perturbations. Even here, geometry continues to guide the path, though with softer constraints. You feel the vastness of space, the patience of forces acting over unimaginable distances, and the comfort that comes from knowing even here, motion obeys natural law. You imagine the trajectories of countless other objects, each interacting subtly with others, creating resonances, nudges, and shifts that maintain overall stability. You feel that the universe's geometry is a gentle conversation among bodies, a negotiation of space and momentum. Even 3I/Atlas, traveling from beyond the sun, participates in this conversation, joining the web of predictable motion. You sense the calm reassurance of this connectivity. The system is self-correcting, balanced, and beautiful in its complexity. You drift toward the comet's smaller dust fragments, noting that they, too, follow orbital paths influenced by the same forces. You sense how radiation pressure from sunlight nudges them gently, creating slight variations in trajectory, yet never causing sudden, dangerous deviations. Their paths become trails of light for observatories to track, markers of history and motion. You feel awe at the elegance of these trails, the persistence of order, and the slow unfolding of time as it shapes the paths of particles across millions of kilometers. You notice how observation and calculation allow humans to predict these orbits with remarkable precision. Astronomers track positions, velocities, and trajectories, building maps of motion that guide understanding and ensure safety. You feel the reassurance of knowledge applied, the calm brought by awareness, and the comfort in knowing that even broken fragments, separated by distance and heat, continue to follow predictable, safe paths. The geometry of the solar system is both invisible and absolute, a silent guide that brings peace through understanding. You float beside the remnants of 3I/Atlas, watching as the comet's fragments drift slowly along their separate paths. The bright, icy glow that once defined the comet now fades gently, dissolving into the vast dark of space. You feel the quiet inevitability of this process, a reminder that even in destruction, there is beauty and order. Each fragment carries a memory of the original body, a record of its long journey across interstellar distances, and a whisper of the forces that finally pulled it apart. You sense that breakage is not an abrupt end, but a transformation, a slow unraveling that allows something new to emerge from the old. Some fragments are small, almost invisible, and crumble under the subtle pressures of solar heating and rotational stress. You imagine these particles breaking into even finer dust, drifting in delicate streams across the solar system. They move with almost imperceptible motion, guided by gravity, radiation, and the faint touch of the solar wind. You feel that even this slow disintegration is not chaotic. It is part of a rhythm that has existed for billions of years. Each tiny grain carries a story, a chemical signature, and a piece of cosmic history, quietly traveling onward. Larger fragments survive longer, maintaining their structure while their surfaces slowly erode. You sense how the sun's energy continues to sculpt them, removing material layer by layer. Their once pristine surfaces become rough, mottled, and darkened, reflecting less light, yet telling a richer story of endurance. You feel a gentle fascination with this process. What remains of a comet is not a single moment frozen in time, but a continuous narrative, shaped by forces both violent and subtle. Even broken, it moves with dignity through space, tracing the invisible corridors of gravity with quiet precision. You watch as some fragments drift toward the outer solar system, their paths becoming more extended, more solitary. Here, in the dim reaches beyond Neptune, they enter a slow and patient isolation, far from the inner planets and the warmth of the sun. You feel the solitude as a soft embrace, a quiet space where the fragments can exist without interference. Time stretches differently here, erosion and radiation are slower, and the fragments' surfaces retain hints of the material they carried from the interstellar void. You sense that these fragments become messengers of history, relics of a distant past that now glide silently in the present. The smallest dust particles, meanwhile, continue their journey through the solar system like whispers of memory. You sense how some are caught by planetary atmospheres or the sun's radiation pressure, altering their paths subtly over decades or centuries. Others may drift indefinitely, leaving the solar system entirely, moving toward interstellar space like echoes returning to the void. You feel awe at the patience of this process. Change is constant, yet gentle, unfolding over timescales far longer than human life. You notice the quiet poetry in watching breakage become dispersal, dissolution become transformation. You imagine the fragments as carriers of chemical and isotopic information, each telling a story of the early universe and the formation of the comet itself. Even as they darken and fade, they hold clues for future observers. Scientists tracing origins, meteors burning as faint light in Earth's skies, or dust mingling with other particles to form new structures. You feel the continuity of the universe in this, the sense that even endings feed into beginnings, and that decay is not loss but contribution. The comet's breakup, though gentle, enriches the space it leaves behind. You notice how rotation influences the survival of fragments. Spinning fragments experience subtle forces that may cause further splitting, shaping their future paths and evolution. You feel the slow rhythm of this motion, as if the comet is breathing through time, each rotation easing away material while guiding the fragment along its own route. Even the smallest spin can lead to eventual crumbling, yet the fragment's motion remains predictable, governed by the geometry of orbits and the balance of forces. You sense the calm reassurance that physics provides order in the midst of change. You drift alongside fragments entering slightly different orbits, each one tracing an invisible path that the universe has carefully defined. Some pass near Jupiter or Saturn, feeling small nudges from their immense gravities, while others continue unperturbed. You feel the quiet patience of these motions, the gradual reshaping of paths and velocities that unfold over decades, centuries, and millennia. The fragments' journeys are slow and deliberate, and in their gradual dispersal, there is a gentle sense of rhythm, a cosmic heartbeat that is both steady and invisible. You sense how some fragments eventually fall into the sun, their final act of dissolution occurring in a blaze of heat and light. Others may collide with distant planets, moons, or even be captured into asteroid-like orbits. You feel the variety of fates, each a possibility that contributes to the intricate web of the solar system. Yet even when a fragment ends its physical journey, it leaves behind dust, light, or chemical signatures, a trace of existence that continues in subtle ways. Breakage, you realize, does not erase history. It transforms it. You watch the dispersal of dust trails, remnants of 3I/Atlas that will eventually intersect with planetary paths, perhaps creating meteor showers that light Earth's skies. You sense the delicate cycles of repetition, the tiny fragments tracing arcs that may repeat every year or remain dormant for centuries. You feel the quiet patience required to understand these patterns, the gentle observation that allows knowledge to emerge from chaos. Even in destruction, the comet contributes to the broader story of the solar system, its fragments weaving into the ongoing tapestry of space. You float with the fragments as their glow diminishes, imagining how their shapes soften over time. Edges that were once sharp, fractures that were once sudden, now fade into smooth, rounded surfaces shaped by heat, radiation, and slow erosion. You sense the inevitability of this smoothing, the gentle lesson that time transforms sharpness into continuity. The comet's breakup becomes less a violent event and more a meditation on change, a slow transition from one state to another. You feel a quiet reflection on impermanence and transformation, carried across space in slow motion. You notice that some fragments, though darkened and distant, continue to carry the comet's essence, its material, history, and story, through the solar system. You sense that these fragments are both endings and beginnings, dissolving yet continuing, fading yet present. The quiet dispersal is not a disappearance but a transformation, a transition from one form to another that stretches across unimaginable distances and timescales. You feel the calm beauty in this process. Nothing is wasted, everything contributes, and even broken pieces maintain a graceful existence. You float gently above the solar system, letting your awareness stretch across the vastness between planets, asteroids, and comet fragments. The emptiness itself feels soft, protective, and reassuring. Distances that are almost impossible for the mind to measure act as natural buffers, keeping worlds and fragments apart in a vast, quiet ballet. You sense that the universe, in its immensity, has built-in safeguards. Collisions are the exception, not the rule. Space is not chaotic or threatening. It is a calm expanse where objects follow predictable paths, guided by gravity and geometry. You imagine the paths of 3I/Atlas fragments as they drift along their distant orbits, never intersecting Earth's trajectory. You feel the comforting scale of separation, the millions of kilometers that make encounters rare. The universe's distances themselves become a protective shield, turning what might feel dangerous into a story of gentle separation. You sense the elegance of this safety. Enormous energy exists in the cosmos, yet it is held at bay by the sheer emptiness between objects. The quietness is deliberate, not accidental, and you breathe more easily within it. You notice how Earth itself moves steadily along its orbit, a path maintained for billions of years. You sense the regularity, the predictable rhythm of your planet's journey around the sun. The orbit curves gracefully, maintaining a safe distance from most comets, asteroids, and planetary neighbors. You feel the reassurance of this pattern, the calm persistence of natural law, the way space itself preserves order. Even when a comet breaks apart, fragments rarely stray toward Earth. Instead, they follow loops and arcs dictated by momentum and gravity, keeping most of their journeys far from danger. You float past the asteroid belt, observing countless rocks drifting quietly along their orbits. Some are remnants of early planetary formation, others fragments from past collisions. You sense that each object's movement is guided, not random, their motions balanced by the gravitational forces of surrounding planets. Collisions do happen, but they are rare events in an almost infinite canvas. You feel the quiet patience of space, the slow, gentle unfolding of motion that allows creation and dissolution to coexist in harmony. Safety, in this vast context, is a natural byproduct of scale and geometry. You imagine a fragment of 3I/Atlas passing near Jupiter. The gas giant's immense gravity nudges the fragment slightly, altering its path by centimeters or kilometers over years, yet the fragment remains on a predictable course. You sense the precision of celestial mechanics, the way forces act in subtle, continuous ways rather than abrupt, violent ones. Space is not empty in the sense of absence. It is filled with influence, gently steering every object along paths that rarely intersect harmfully. You feel a profound trust in these quiet, patient laws. You drift toward the distant regions of the solar system, where comets travel slowly along wide arcs and dust drifts far beyond planets. You sense how even these distant bodies, moving through near nothing, remain stable in their orbits, their velocities tuned to the gentle tug of the sun and the occasional influence of nearby stars. The vastness of space is not threatening. It is protective, a quiet container for motion and time. You feel the reassurance of understanding these distances, recognizing that the emptiness that might seem lonely is in fact a guardian, keeping collisions extraordinarily rare. You notice how meteor showers, which originate from small comet fragments or dust streams, occur without harm. You feel the beauty of this natural order. Particles enter Earth's atmosphere, burn up harmlessly, and leave behind only fleeting light. Space's safety is not just about distance. It is about the precise orchestration of physical laws. Even fragments that intersect Earth do so as tiny grains, their energy dissipated by friction and atmosphere. You sense the elegance in this. The universe allows interaction without danger, transformation without destruction, and observation without fear. You imagine other planets drifting silently along their orbits. Mars, Saturn, Neptune, and beyond. You feel how each world, despite occasional gravitational nudges or minor asteroid impacts, moves predictably and safely. Space's calm is maintained not through absence of force but through the balance of forces. Distances, orbits, velocities, and mass all work together to create a web of safety, a quiet protection built into the very structure of the solar system. You sense the comfort that comes from understanding this order, a reassurance that even broken comets cannot easily disrupt it. You sense the patience of cosmic time, stretching far beyond human perception. You notice that even catastrophic events, like comet breakups, unfold slowly, giving the universe time to absorb and integrate changes. You feel the gentle rhythm of this patience. Fragments drift apart, dust disperses, orbits adjust, and the system maintains its calm. Space's quiet is not static. It is dynamic, alive with motion and influence, yet never hurried or reckless. You sense the soft hand of time smoothing transitions and preserving stability, ensuring that danger is minimal. You imagine yourself floating among these distances, feeling the scale of the solar system and the protective layers of emptiness. You sense that the universe's calm is not an absence of energy or action, but a profound orchestration of forces over immense spaces. Gravity, momentum, radiation, and rotation all play their parts in a slow, deliberate choreography. You feel awe at the subtle complexity that ensures safety and harmony, and a quiet gratitude for the protective patterns built into the cosmos. Understanding this balance brings a deep, meditative sense of peace. You notice that knowledge itself contributes to safety. Scientists and astronomers track objects like 3I/Atlas and its fragments, observing orbits, measuring velocities, and predicting paths. You sense the reassurance that human observation adds to natural law. Curiosity becomes a companion to caution, understanding complements geometry, and knowledge transforms uncertainty into calm. The universe remains vast and wild, yet observation and mathematics provide a framework for security and comprehension. You feel the quiet confidence of knowing, a gentle shield of awareness layered atop space's inherent protection. You begin this chapter with a quiet breath, letting the memory of drifting comet fragments soften inside your mind. You feel yourself floating once more in the vastness of space, surrounded by calm, patient distances that stretch in every direction. The universe feels unhurried, almost drowsy, as if it too is breathing with you. You sense that everything you've learned, from dust streams to gentle orbits, now gathers together like threads in a warm blanket. Safety, you realize, is not one idea but many, woven into the cosmos with quiet intention. You picture 3I/Atlas again, not as a danger, but as a traveler unraveling peacefully near the sun. The fragments float away from each other like feathers drifting apart in a breeze. They carry no threat, no hidden momentum aimed toward Earth. You sense how distance becomes comfort. Even at their closest, the fragments stay far beyond any risky paths. They are wanderers passing through, not visitors approaching your world. You feel your body ease at that thought, the tension dissolving like ice in warm hands. You turn your attention to distance, the first layer of safety. It stretches wider than imagination, a cushion made of emptiness. The closest fragments remain millions of kilometers away, gliding through regions of space Earth never enters. You notice how Earth follows a strict, circular rhythm, never swerving into the cosmic paths where such fragments travel. Space, for all its mysteries, is organized. Every object keeps to its lane. The lanes are wide. The lanes rarely cross. You realize that danger in space is not common, separation is. You drift toward the next layer of protection, gravity. You sense how it behaves not like a sudden pull, but like a steady hand guiding everything along smooth arcs. Gravity shapes paths with patience, curving orbits gently. It doesn't fling fragments into chaos, but nudges them into predictable patterns. You imagine gravity as a soft river current, pulling gently at the fragments of 3I/Atlas, steering them along a course that bends safely away from Earth. Even if a piece wanted to wander toward your planet, gravity would need to twist its path precisely, at just the right time, with just the right angle, an incredibly rare alignment. Your mind rests in that improbability. Now you picture time, the third protector. Space events unfold slowly, almost reluctantly. A comet doesn't suddenly lurch. It changes over years, decades, centuries. Astronomers watch these changes long before anything comes near Earth's orbit. You feel comfort in this slow unfolding. There is always time to understand, time to measure, time to breathe. Nothing rushes in space. Nothing leaps unexpectedly. Even a breakup like that of 3I/Atlas is a gentle drift, recorded and analyzed long before it could ever matter. Time becomes a spacious room in which you can relax. You let your awareness move toward observation, the fourth layer of safety. You picture telescopes opening their eyes in the nighttime desert, on mountain tops, and in floating observatories far above Earth's atmosphere. You imagine scientists watching tiny specks of dust sparkle faintly in their instruments. Their patience becomes another protection. They measure paths. They calculate orbits. They simulate thousands of possible futures. And every result shows the same thing. The fragments of this broken visitor do not come near Earth. You sense how knowledge itself becomes a lantern that banishes fear. You shift to the fifth layer, Earth's atmosphere, which has guarded the planet for billions of years. It catches small fragments, burns them into streaks of harmless light, and lets the ashes drift gently to the ground. You imagine how even if a tiny grain from 3I/Atlas eventually drifted close, far in the future, long after its main fragments have dispersed, it would vanish in a brief glow. A moment of light, not a moment of danger. You feel gratitude for this invisible blanket wrapped around your world, absorbing the universe's smallest gifts with quiet grace. Now you gather all these layers in your mind. Distance, gravity, time, observation, atmosphere. Together, they form a calm assurance. You feel them not as abstract concepts but as sensations. A widening space in your chest, a slow settling in your bones. You realize that the universe is not built to harm casually. It is built to move in harmony, with forces and distances balancing each other in ways that keep worlds safe for billions of years. You drift deeper into this understanding. You sense how astronomers map every detail of 3I/Atlas's path. Its speed, its direction, its tilt, its angle relative to Earth's orbit. The data forms a kind of soft geometry, a shape that lies nowhere near the corridor Earth travels. You imagine Earth's orbit as a ring of calm, untouched by the comet's broken trail. The closest point between them remains comfortably far. You feel this space as a buffer, a soothing distance wrapped around the planet like a halo. You let your imagination follow the fragments again, watching them drift farther from each other, spreading like dust in sunlight. Some pieces spiral deeper into the inner solar system, destined to fade in the sun's warmth. Others arch outward, toward the darkness between planets, where cold returns and motion slows. None move toward Earth. You sense how their paths were shaped long before they arrived, formed in distant interstellar space, guided by the sun's pull, and influenced gently by giant planets. The story of their journey has always been one of passing by, not approaching. You let this truth soften through you. A broken comet does not mean broken safety. You feel how the breakup is simply a natural shedding, a release of ice and dust warmed by sunlight. The violence imagined from afar is gentle up close, a slow unraveling, not an explosive shatter. The universe, you realize, prefers slow processes. Even fragmentation becomes a quiet art. You turn inward for a moment, sensing how fear often grows when understanding is absent. But now, with the pieces gathered, you feel clarity replacing worry. Knowledge is a calming tide. You see how the cosmos is both enormous and orderly, both powerful and peaceful. The more you understand its rhythms, the more you lean into its quiet. You sense that fear is a brief visitor, easily soothed by the scale of truth. You float now between Earth and the sun, within the silent glow of space, absorbing all the layers of protection that cradle your planet. You sense the flow of the solar wind brushing past you, harmless, guiding dust away. You feel the faint tug of gravity, constant and steady. You observe Earth's orbit curving with ancient precision. Each element brings reassurance, each layer whispering the same message. You are safe and always have been. You imagine the last glimmer of 3I/Atlas fading into distance, its fragments no longer a traveler but part of the solar wind's endless drift. You sense how even its disappearance is gentle. Nothing dramatic, nothing sudden, just a quiet dissolving, like a sigh released into sunlight. And as you rest within this calm, a final question arrives, soft as a feather settling on water. If even the end of a comet can feel peaceful, what quiet beauty might appear when a comet truly vanishes into light? You drift toward that glowing thought, the beginning of the final chapter. You begin this last chapter with a slow breath, letting the memory of everything you've witnessed settle quietly inside you. You imagine yourself floating once more in the wide stillness of space, surrounded by soft light and endless distance. The journey has carried you from a wandering visitor's arrival to its delicate unraveling, and now you watch the final stage unfold with a sense of deep calm. Nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels lost. You simply witness a natural ending, shaped by sunlight, time, and the gentle laws that guide the cosmos. You picture the remains of 3I/Atlas drifting toward the sun, a faint ribbon of dust dissolving into brightness. The fragments no longer look like pieces of a once intact traveler. They look like shimmering grains suspended in a golden haze, each one catching the sun's warmth and scattering it in soft glimmers. You imagine how quiet this process must be. No shattering, no sound. Only the faintest sigh of ancient ice meeting the inevitable glow of heat. You sense how endings in space are not dramatic events, but slow transitions, like frost melting at dawn. You let yourself follow one of the fragments, drifting beside it as it spirals gradually inward. It barely moves, at least from where you float. Space makes even swift motion seem like stillness. Yet you know it is falling, pulled by the sun's gravity in a graceful arc. As it draws nearer, the sunlight grows brighter, warmer, more insistent. The fragment responds in small ways. Its surface sheds wisps of vapor, tiny dust grains lift away, and its shape softens at the edges. You feel a strange tenderness watching it. This piece of the comet has traveled for eons, crossed unimaginable distances, and now its journey is ending in a gentle glow. You feel no sadness, only a quiet gratitude. Not all endings are losses. Some are transformations, the kind that make space feel both ancient and alive. The fragment you follow does not disappear all at once. It thins. It lightens. It becomes a thread of brightness too delicate to hold form. Eventually, sunlight carries its dust outward, sweeping it into the solar wind where it joins the soft stream of charged particles flowing endlessly from the sun. What was once part of a solid traveler is now part of a drifting, luminous breath that touches every corner of the solar system. You drift back a little, wanting to see the larger picture. You notice how the remnants of 3I/Atlas stretch across a faint arc of space, almost invisible unless you look closely. The comet is no longer a single object. It is a memory made of dust, a trail of tiny origins dissolving into the warm light. You imagine how the sun must see this, how thousands of grains slip into its brightness every moment, becoming threads in its radiant tapestry. You feel a strange peace in knowing that even cosmic travelers eventually return to the star that shaped their path. You think about how vulnerable the comet once seemed, breaking apart near the sun. But now you understand that vulnerability is not failure. It is simply a response to warmth, to motion, to age. Every object in space changes. Every object yields to time. The breakup of 3I/Atlas was not destruction. It was revelation. It allowed you to see the inner layers of a visitor born long before the sun, carrying materials older than Earth itself. And now, as those ancient grains drift toward their final glow, you sense gratitude for the glimpse it offered. You breathe deeply, feeling how the story of the comet has become part of your own inner quiet. You sensed its entrance, traveled with its fragments, learned the patience of orbits, and rested in the knowledge of safety. Now you observe its final transformation and allow yourself to soften with it. Space feels less like an empty void and more like a gentle field of motion, where every event unfolds with intention. Even endings have rhythm. Even endings have grace. You shift your attention to the solar wind, the invisible river that carries the last remains of the comet outward. It moves not like a harsh storm but like a steady breath, flowing from the sun in all directions. You picture the dust grains merging with this flow, becoming part of an endless, drifting current. Some will travel far, reaching the outer edges of the solar system over thousands of years. Others will spiral back toward the sun and vanish completely. Their futures are quiet, unhurried, and natural. You sense how this final stage is not a disappearance but a soft continuation. You imagine how astronomers on Earth will watch the fading trail for a little while longer. Through telescopes, they may see a faint brightening, a subtle thinning, a slow dimming of light as the fragments spread out and vanish. No alarms, No concerns. Only observation. Only curiosity. They know the comet has completed its passage. And you sense how this knowledge adds another layer of calm to your understanding. Nothing unexpected remains. Nothing hidden waits in the darkness. The story has unfolded as gently as the physics that guide it. You allow your awareness to drift back toward Earth now, floating above its curved horizon. The planet glows softly in the sunlight, wrapped in its blue atmosphere. You feel the comfort of returning to this familiar home after traveling so far in your imagination. Yet you carry with you the rhythm of space, the slowness, the patience, the vast distances that make danger rare and beauty abundant. The comet has left its mark not on Earth, but on your sense of wonder. You take one more look toward the sun, imagining the last mote of the comet dissolving into brightness. You reflect on how the universe does not cling to its travelers. It welcomes them, transforms them, and lets them go. You sense how natural this is, how peaceful, how complete. The vanishing of 3I/Atlas becomes a reminder that every journey, even one lasting millions of years, can end softly without noise or fear. You breathe in the calm of that thought. You breathe out the lingering tension you might have once held. The comet is gone now, but its story remains with you. You feel gratitude for the way it taught you about distance, light, gravity, and time. You feel gratitude for how it showed you the quiet safety woven through the solar system. And you feel gratitude for the gentle ending that now settles like a soft blanket over your thoughts. As you drift in this peaceful stillness, another realization arises. Space never empties completely. When one traveler fades, another eventually appears. The cosmos is full of wanderers, icy messengers from distant regions, drifting worlds of dust and frozen gases. Somewhere out there, another comet is beginning its long arc toward the sun, carrying its own secrets, its own ancient materials, its own quiet glow. You imagine its slow approach, a journey that may take thousands of years but will someday bring it near the warm center of the solar system. And with that thought, you let go of the last trace of 3I/Atlas. You allow its story to settle gently into memory, like the final ember of a fire fading into ash. You feel your mind soften, your breath deepen, your body relax. The comet's glow merges with the sun, becoming part of an endless stream of light that reaches Earth every morning. As you drift into the quiet of your own night, one soft, lingering question accompanies you. What new wonders will arrive when the next visitor begins its long, luminous journey toward the sun?